So I was sweating the Oscars last night. I'm still in shock at what happened. I'm sure everyone's talking about it. But Coda beat Power of the Dog for Best Picture. Yeah. It's the first time I've ever made a sports bet on the Oscars. Might be my last. I've never even seen any of these movies. I don't really watch much movies. I just like dogs. But it's time to go to Aria and try to win our bet back at PLO. So I get to Aria, call me for 5-5 PLO, 2K max buy-in here. Seat 1 is open, so I go head over there, which is great because I like seats 1 and 8 for recording on the camera. But then a reg tells me that he's going to take that seat instead, and he's in seat 6. I tell him I really want the seat, and so he offers to sell it to me for $100. And I counter with $5, and the negotiation ends there. He just takes the seat, so I'm in seat 6 first hand. He tells me, though, if I win the first hand, we'll trade, because he's been losing all day in this seat, so I have to play the first hand no matter what. Hand isn't that interesting. I have ace, queen, 2, 3. We end up chopping with another reg at the table. There's only 2 regs at the table. The others 5 people I don't recognize at all. And since we chopped, I made like $100 on the first hand, and I asked him, can we switch now? And he goes, nah. So I guess don't trust poker players. In terms of pre-flop hand selection, I like PLO because I feel like you can play wider ranges and it's not as punishing as no limit hold'em as long as your post-flop skills are good. Although I would say for newer players coming to the game, play tight so that your post-flop decisions become easier. 2 really big influences in my PLO career have been Phil Galfond and Dr. Geik, who's my dentist. Galfond always says to think outside the box, don't autopilot yourself into standard plays. And my dentist, every time I visit him, he always tells me to open wide. And so after a couple limpers, I opened to 50 in the cutoff with King 3, 4, 6. And the button seat 7, 3 bets to 195, and it goes 3-way. Flop is 7, 4, 8 with 2 clubs, so we have a gutter to an 8 high straight and a king high flush draw. We check to the button, who just pots 615, and seat 3, who's the other limper, goes all in for less. So here we don't have the nut flush draw, so it's possible that one person has the nut flush draw. And seat 7, we don't really have any reads on yet, but we will after a few minutes. We decide to fold here because we might not be in great shape. One of them probably has 5-6, and the other one likely has a flush draw or something. So we fold, and the turn comes Jack of clubs, river comes Jack of diamonds. Seat 7 has Queen 9, 5, 6 with 2 diamonds. And seat 3 has 8, 10, 10, king. I'm not really sure what's going on here. The 3-bet seems questionable, as does the all-in from the shorter stack. But as you'll soon see, seat 7 is actually going to be the star of this episode. We're going to just call him Calvin Brodus Jr., maybe Calvin for short, because this session all he does is pot. We play the next hand, someone opens to 40, and we defend ace 5, 10, 6, nut hearts. And Calvin repots to 245. It goes 5-way, so this is an action game. He bets into the field on queen, queen, jack, and everyone folds. So for the next bunch of hands, I play a little bit and I fold some, but every time I play, Calvin's coming in with a pot. So we quickly bleed about $500 away in the first 10 hands, and we reload. And then hand number 85, we pick up ace 4-4 king in the low jack. And this time I limp along with some other people, and Calvin pots to 50. So when a really aggressive player at the table is just driving the action, I think limping and letting them build the pots is a fine adjustment to make. Flop comes ace of hearts, six of hearts, king of diamonds. We flop top two. We check to Calvin, and he just checks back, so it checks through. Turn is a queen of diamonds, and it checks to me, and I throw out a bet of 125 into 210 here. We actually do reasonably all right against Jack 10 if we get raised, and because the flop checked through, we likely have the best hand otherwise. And here only Calvin calls. The river is a jack of diamonds. I think the best line for a very aggressive opponent is to actually check here. Since we're betting into the field, he probably puts us on something like top two pair, some sets, and straights. And so for the jack of diamonds, I think a lot of people would want to bet here, but I think it's best to let an aggressive opponent try to hang himself. So I check. He bets 450, and I raise to 1200, and he very quickly folds, which indicates that he didn't have anything. So he was just trying to steal the pot from me. A few hands later, it all folds around. I think people have been limping and folding a lot at this table because Calvin is potting every hand. And we look down at queen 8-5-3 double suited on the button. Since I kind of know what's coming, but I want to play this hand on the button, I just go for a min raise to 20. And then Calvin, who's in the small blind, repots to 65, and we go heads up. The flop is ace jack 4, pot is 145, and he only bets 40 into 145. So here we peel because we have a gutter to the wheel, and we have backdoor hearts, and also he might just not have anything, so if he checks, we can maybe try to stab and take it away. The turn is a king of hearts, and now he bets a little bigger. He bets 175 into 225. We pick up a flush draw. We call here. We could also raise bluff here, but still not having enough reads on this player. I'm not sure I really want to try to pull a bluff with a queen blocker and represent a queen 10 straight against someone who's shown to be pretty wild and aggressive. The river is a six of hearts, and he bets 400 into 675. So he seems to not really have any breaks. I don't see any reason to raise, as if we raise, he'll just fold all his bluffs, and we might just narrow his range down to a nut flush or something. So I just call, and he immediately says, if you have a flush, you're good. We show, and he mucks. We finally get a seat change to seat number 1 because the reg leaves. And we fold a bunch of hands all the while Calvin's driving the action. His stack's been swinging from 5K down to 0 to reloads back up to 3K. Hand number 97, we pick up ace queen 10-5, which we don't even play. But this was when a new player comes to the table. And this player is a supporting character in this episode. We're going to call him Sean Bean. For those of you who don't know who Sean Bean is, he's a Hollywood actor, and almost every role he ever plays in a film or TV series, he gets killed. So sorry for the spoiler alert. Hand number 100 of the vlog, we pick up 10-8-2-5, and we just fold. And since we have 100 hands and we're up, we hit and run this game. Actually, we don't, because who would leave this game? But I'd like to mention that Sean Bean gets stacked here. Hand number 101, we pick up double suited kings in the cutoff, which is great. And for the first time this session, seat 7, Calvin folds. And there are two limpers, and I make it 50 and it goes 4-way. The flop is King Jack 7 with 2 hearts, so we flop an absolute monster. Limper, the limper in the 8-seat leads pot for 200, and I make it 800 because he's signaling to the table that he has a strong hand, so we might as well start piling our money in. Under the gun, who limped, thinks for a while, and he just cold calls 800, leaving like less than 300 behind. And to our surprise, seat 8, who's a reg that we first chopped with, he tank folds. The turn is a 9 of hearts, which gives us a flush, but we don't have the nut flush. And under the gun, donk jams 270 all in. We run it twice, and we're up against Ace Queen 7-10 with just the naked 10 of hearts. So he's drawing dead, so running it twice doesn't matter. And he gets stacked and he reloads. Hand number 105, we pick up Queen Jack 7-7. Yeah, we just fold this, but Sean Bean gets stacked here. The very next hand, hand number 106, we pick up Queen 9 7-10, which we could play, but Calvin is raising again, and there's a lot of action, so we just fold this hand, and Sean Bean gets stacked here. Hand number 109, we pick up King 8 Jack, a decent hand. We open to 40, and we have to end up check folding a flop that goes 4-way, and Sean Bean gets stacked here. So at this point, we're pretty happy. Life is good. We're up about 2,000. We left seat 6 where Sean Bean is now sitting. And PLO is just really easy. We pick up Queen 9-7, open to 40, goes 3 callers, and of course Calvin repots. And we go 4-way to a flop. Flop is huge. It's Queen of Spades, 7 of Spades, 4 of Hearts. We flop top set, top 2. And we have Calvin just potting into the field for 1,000. We stick all our money in. Calvin has 3,015. I ask him if he wants to go once or twice. Immediately goes once. Calvin has Ace, King 8 with the nut spade draw. A guy mentions in seat 5 that he folded 3 spades. We have a spade in our hand. We're in amazing shape. Turns 5 of clubs, which doesn't help him at all. And the river. Well, life is no longer that good, but at least we're not Sean Bean. Speaking of which, hand 138, we pick up aces in the cutoff, no suit. After a limper, I make it 50. Button calls, small blind calls, and the big blind, who is Sean Bean, he switched seats to seat 4 because he realizes seat 6 is a death seat. He pots to 260. We repot, we go all in with him, and it's Sean Bean, so he's got no shot, right? We decide to just run it once. Runs out 8-8, 4-4, 10, and aces just hold, and Sean Bean gets stacked. Hand number 151, we look down at a really nice looking Ace Queen 6-8 double suited. We play this hand for 60, but we completely whiff the flop, and we end up folding, and Sean Bean gets stacked. This is actually the end of the Sean Bean saga, as he finally calls it quits and stands up to leave. This person actually took all his beats really well. He didn't look annoyed, and I feel like he actually had a good time. And I think that's pretty common with a lot of the PLO player pool. They're used to the crazy ups and downs of this game, so I feel like they don't take the game as seriously as no limit players. Anyways, hand number 153, a new player sits in where the old Sean Bean was. He's got big shoes to fill. We make a pretty loose call with 10-7-7-3 on the cutoff when Calvin, still blasting off, raises to 40. And new Sean Bean also calls, and it goes 4-way. We flop a boat on 8-7-8. Checks to me, and I bet 75 into 165. And now the new Sean Bean calls here. Turns a 6 of hearts, and I go pretty big here. Since I bet 4-way and he called, I assume he'll have a lot of 8x. I bet 300 into 315, and he calls. And the river is a 2 of diamonds. The pot is 915. I think it's probably standard to check back here sometimes, as he could have made a boat with 8x and there are straights out there. But I size down. I size 300 into 915 because I really want value. But if I go any bigger, because there's also straights out there, I feel like he'll just end up folding his 8x. He calls, and the new Sean Bean gets crippled first hand. 3 hands later, Sean Bean version 2 gets stacked and he leaves. So I guess the Iron Throne is really cursed. The game ends up winding down as Calvin is leaving the game because they just called a quarter PLO. And a couple other people leave, so I feel like it's my cue to go home as I'm pretty hungry. We do play one more hand. It's 4-way limped. There's no Calvin here to pot it for us pre-flop. And we have ace 9-9-2. The flop is ace of spades, king of hearts, queen of hearts. We have the nut flush draw. Someone pots to 40, and I call. And big blind also calls. Turns a 9 of clubs, giving us a set. And the person who potted the flop checks here. Usually when you see that, I would just put them on some blockers like jacks or 10s, as there's no reason for him to just pot and then check jack 10 again. I feel like our hand is now the best, so I bet 125 into 160. The big blind calls, and the initial potter snap folds, so he most certainly had just a pair of jacks or 10s and just gave up. The river is a 3 of hearts. He checks, and I bet half pot, looking for some value, as he should have some flushes here, but he just ends up folding. So we win that hand, we pick up our chips, and we go home. We ended up being in this game for 4,100 and cashed out 3712. A little bit disappointing, especially with that 7K pot against Calvin. But we're pretty happy to have come back and only lose about $400 on the day. We also played pretty well, I think. We tightened up a bit since Calvin was driving the action. Or not. I guess I'm still just a whale. Anyways, here's some graphs. Hope you guys like this.